The Lion of the West, David Crockett, 1786-1836. Somewhere around 1830, a former soldier and noted bear hunter from the remote tributaries of the West Tennessee area, and now remarkably serving his second term in the House of Representatives, was on the verge of becoming a national sensation. For a man who was born into the grinding poverty, he had no real formal education and struggled to read and write legible documents. Colonel David Crockett was unlike any politician in Washington City. With his fearless stance and his wit as a frontier individualist who would not succumb to boorish party machinations, he was a refreshing novelty. David Crockett was no stranger to fighting against overwhelming odds, but politically he could not resist taking on the 7th President of the United States, Andrew Jackson, over a bill that called for the removal of Indians from their ancestral lands. When it was all over, President's favorite bill had been passed. While David hunted for bears and new votes, a young republic found a living legend whose vernacular matched its robust appetite for westward expansion. Within 2 years, David Crockett was back in Congress, becoming half horse, half alligator. By 1833, the American public's demand for Western heroes had reached its first apex, and David Crockett now found his political career in an unusual and frustrating predicament. His sometimes rough and boisterous backwoods personality had initiated the makings of a national legendary figure that had gone out of control. Even the popular use of colonel, his former militia rank, seemed to fit this new national character. Though the dubious efforts of the political hack writers and opportunists, Colonel Crockett had now evolved into a giant, half-horse, half-alligator braggart, a strange mixture of nobleman and buffoon. In December of 1833, he would actually witness how this phenomenon was to play out, at of all things, the theater. The performance was none other than James Kirk Paulding's The Lion of the West, starring the famous actor James Hackett. And for the second year, it continued to attract large audiences who knew that it was a parody on Colonel David Crockett. Now, with Colonel Crockett escorted to his seat amongst the buzzing audience, only a stage curtain separated the two legends. The actor Hackett, garishly covered in leather and fur, appeared on stage, his eyes immediately connected with Crockett's. The gaze was quickly followed by an exchange of bows as the audience roared its approval. The Lion of the West had just met himself coming back. Quote, "The return with the capital without hearing, seeing Colonel Crockett betrayed a total destitution of curiosity, and it perfectly insensibly to the Lions of the West," unquote. Niles Register. The excitement of the Americans displayed for David Crockett and the frontiersmen like him, including those who ventured beyond the western boundaries, which were always moving west, was relatively new phenomenon in the early 1830s. Prior to the War of 1812, these leather stockings were not always held in highest regards, as many equated those who lived, explored, and settled into the wilderness as a lower form of civilization. When General Andrew Jackson's ragtag army of riflemen and regulars sounding defeated the British Army in the Battle of New Orleans, the popular lore of the American riflemen catapulted these basic, simple, and humble men into the national limelight. The hunters of Kentucky were now the new vanguard of American democracy and individualism, creating mythical characters that were half men and half beast. A bank was raised to hide our breast, not that we thought of dying, but that we always take a rest. Unless the game was flying, Behind it stood a little force. None wished it to be greater, for every man was half horse and half an alligator. From the 1815 ditty, The Hunters of Kentucky.